Thank you very much. As you know, this is going to be the 68th conference of this type. Now, in the past, it's been called the Department of Public Information Non-Governmental Organizations Conference. We call it the DPI NGO Conference, which is very jargony. So it will be renamed this year, and we'll decide together with everyone, with the whole city, and with civil society, what it should be called exactly. But it's going to be about Sustainable Development Goal 11. So what's your role in the conference and how does it get put together? So first of all, there's a planning committee, and on the planning committee, the three entities are the United Nations, representatives from Salt Lake City, and the community, obviously, so local planning committee, and the executive committee, which is a group of representatives of NGOs who work in New York to represent the 1,000, almost 500 NGOs who are associated with NGOs. So they play a representative role, and they sort of lead the planning for civil society in New York together with us. And it's a co-host, and it's an equal co-hosting. So you have three co-hosts for this conference. You have Salt Lake City and its community, you have the United Nations, and you have this executive, what we call the NGO DPI Executive Committee. And in terms of where it happens, it's going to happen both in Salt Lake City and in New York. We will have regular meetings in New York, and there will be regular meetings in Salt Lake City. So what's the structure? We call the whole planning process the planning committee, but the structure is broken down into subcommittees. I've listed just some of them, not every single one. One subcommittee is called the program subcommittee, and that's basically how we slice and dice the conference. Okay, what sessions are we going to have? What are we going to call them? How are the blurbs going to read? What language are we going to use? And who are we going to invite as speakers? Very important. Next, workshops. So there's sort of the main, there's a plenary session, which is a big opening session, and there's a closing session, which is and everyone in the same closing session. And then we have large, what we call roundtables, and then workshops. Now, the workshops can be large and they can be very, very small. And basically, we offer that space to NGOs, and there's a subcommittee that takes in all the, sends out the call for proposals for a workshop with the criteria, reviews them all, and allocates the space. That's done by civil society, by an NGO group. So there'll be an NGO workshop subcommittee. There'll be an exhibit subcommittee. We're blessed to have the Salt Lake Palace. It is huge. There's so much space. We're going to, I think, be able to do wonderful things with it, and also based, of course, on your ideas. So there's a subcommittee for that. Just like there are apps for everything, there's a subcommittee for everything when it comes to this conference. Side events. Now, there's a sort of formal conference that's going to happen at the Palace, at the Convention Center, the Conference Center, but I think there may be interest in organizing other things on the part of certain organizations. So there may be side events, off-site. There may be other public events to make it more accessible to the public, and other special events on or off-site that are not necessarily a part of the official conference, but that we want to bring in under the umbrella of the conference and give especially local actors a chance to engage with all the people that are going to be here in town. Accessibility for people with disabilities and just accessibility in general, people who speak different languages, there's nothing for that, and the outcome document. Now, it's sort of the last thing I'm going to talk about, but there's a committee for the outcome document, and I'll talk about that last. This conference is also special because it's chaired by a person from civil society, an NGO representative, not by an NGO person. So the actual chair of the conference is going to be a representative of civil society. Now that call for nominations is about to go out soon. The NGO DPI Executive Committee in New York is managing the process. It will be an open global process that will be launched hopefully very, very soon. So that's something that's special about this conference. The planning is, so there are co-chairs of the planning committee, and so the UN is co-chairing the planning process. But the moment the conference starts, it is civil society that's chairing the conference. So another thing that makes this a very special conference. There's a concept note. That is something that, with your feedback, and we're going to be doing a lot of listening today, we're going to draft, get feedback on, and that will be sort of our little Magna Carta for the event. And finally, there's an outcome document. Every single conference has an outcome document, and it's drafted by this subcommittee under the leadership and guidance of the chair, and with feedback from as many people as possible. The draft is posted and hopefully in multiple languages. We have global consultations on that draft. We come to the conference with a conference draft that's still a draft, and there are town halls at the conference itself. The outcome document subcommittee then meets, and those town halls are chaired by the chair of the conference. The outcome document subcommittee then meets again with the chair and the co-chairs of the planning committee, and they finalize that document. And in the closing session of the conference, basically that document is read aloud and hopefully, usually, adopted by acclamation. And it is an absolutely startling, amazing moment. Because really people have put a lot into it, and you know, it's the role of that outcome document subcommittee to make sure that people see themselves in that document. As part of the outcome document, there's also a youth declaration that youth themselves are completely in charge of, and it comes under the umbrella of the outcome document. That doesn't mean that youth don't also have input into the outcome document itself. So this outcome document is really the legacy of the conference. It could eventually be called something like the Salt Lake City Declaration. I mean, that's something that civil society itself will decide. The UN has very little input into that, but it's something that we're going to ask you all to start thinking about. What do you want the legacy of this conference to be? It's wonderful to get people together. We know that people are going to have a wonderful experience, but that's not the only reason we're doing this. There needs to be a greater impact. So, can we click on the icon? I'm clicking from here. So, I don't know if I want to read all of this, but don't click yet. I just wanted to make sure, we've talked a lot about the Sustainable Development Goals. I actually totally eliminated that slide because I think you've seen enough of that, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows, if you click on the icon for me, that every single goal has targets and indicators. And you know, part of the, I think, why this agenda is resonating with people is because it's really specific without being too prescriptive. It doesn't tell you what to do. It just simply says, we're a global community. This is what we want. Can you click on the targets and indicators? Yeah. So this particular goal sets out targets. Can you just scroll down quickly? We're not going to read them all. Scroll down, scroll. So 11, there's more than that. So 11 plus targets, right? Because then there's an ABC under some of them. So 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11 ABC. So there's those targets and indicators. So not only is it pointing everyone towards specific targets, and my guess is that if you look at the specific things that your organization is doing and you sort of look at the goals that sort of match what you're doing, you're going to find an indicator that you can use to measure what you're doing and use for monitoring also the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So just something to be aware of when we talk about, you know, what the Sustainable Development Goals mean for your work and how we can feed back into a global process and achieve these goals. And you know, the president of the university said these goals are aspirational. The truth of the matter is we actually do want to achieve the eradication of poverty by 2030, and we can do it. We just need political will. And where does political will come from? The people! Yes, thank you. Okay, next. Do you think we can achieve gender equality by 2030? I think we can, if we put our minds to it. Okay, so next slide. So this is, yeah. So this is really where we want your, maybe before we go here, so this is basically the consultation. We have almost 45 minutes to talk about these questions. But if you can go back 2 slides to this. Are there any questions about this? About perhaps the timeline? I know there are probably a ton of questions, but do you have any questions about this? Yes, please. Yeah, so the youth declaration, there's also a youth subcommittee. I should have mentioned, I should have listed that, but you know, I didn't want to list everything. So there's a youth subcommittee, and they organize a lot of things at the conference. So on all of the subcommittees for the last conference, there was also a youth co-chair on every single subcommittee. So they were involved in all planning aspects in a leadership way, and also they populated in different ways the subcommittees, all of them. So the youth subcommittee, though, is in particular charged and has a responsibility for developing programs specifically for youth within the conference. So at our last conference, in addition to all the things I talked about, and again, it was remiss of me not to mention it, but there was a youth hub that had activities throughout the day, throughout the conference. And the youth start with a youth caucus in the morning at 8 a.m. They get together, they said, here we are, the conference is starting, what are we here to achieve together? And then they caucus every single morning. And part of the caucusing is talking about their the declaration and how they're going to learn and engage in the different sessions during the conference to feed into their learning and refining of that document and finalizing it for the final day of the conference and getting feedback from people who maybe haven't been involved yet. So all the youth that come are there ways for them to get involved, and they have all sorts of events at the youth hub. And we help them a lot, and we help them with fundraising. And two other things I'll mention quickly for youth is, and we're going to be doing, helping them doing workshops and sharing best practices for self-financing to get to the conference, and also to raise money to help youth from developing countries or marginalized communities to get to the conference. Department of Public Information, for this, it's 18 to 32. So that's the age of the youth that can get a youth badge, and that's more or less the age group. So you can get involved. And I don't think the committees have gotten rolling yet, but it'll be all on social media, and there'll be a youth subcommittee based in Salt Lake City as well, and we will connect New York and Salt Lake City. So just a little bit of patience, but the information will come around. Okay, and you can also get the information through UVU. So I think there'll be a hub for this. Yes. Yes. Okay, I think it's a pretty open process, but not obviously you can't have too many people on a committee. So what we do is we do an open call in New York to populate the subcommittees and ask for volunteers, and then the co-chairs sort of decide who they're gonna. I don't want to say pick because it's not a nice word, but who is most qualified. Right? And that's how the process goes in New York, and I'm assuming that here there'll be a similar process locally. Yes?
So what would then be like our timeline once the subcommittee is set up? Or say we wanted to do a workshop, an exhibit, out on the floor, what would be the timeline and such, and who would we contact to say, hey, we're interested in this X, Y, Z?
So we're working on a timeline that we can share with everything that'll have all of these different aspects, but each of the subcommittees sort of designed its own timeline, because if you're working on the program, you need to invite people. And just to let you know, we have a pretty high level of ambition in terms of who we want to see speaking at this conference. And we don't want all mega high level, well-known people, but we are going to reach out to our Secretary General to come, and I think he's going to see the value in coming, at least I certainly hope so. We have a fantastic platform here. You have very high-level people from your community that are going to be here, and others. So we're going to need to start reaching out, but before we can do that, we need our concept done. So I think that locally, the idea is for a public announcement that would be made at the end of November, and we hope to have a final concept note, maybe a one-pager by then. So we have some work cut out for it. But in terms of workshops, of course, there's a lot that needs to be put in place. So, just hold on, but all of that will come out, all that information. Yes? Yes.
For presenting a workshop, do you have to be DPI accredited or PPI?
So in New York, typically yes, but because we're here, there'll definitely be a carve out for local NGOs. We can't say to you all, okay, to be involved, you have to apply, so apply now, and then you get right. And we definitely want you involved, and we don't want that to be a hindrance at all. So no, you don't. That's a short answer. Yes.
So considering the theme is sustainable cities, and yet this is non-governmental organizations, what are the role of cities and governments in both the planning process and in the execution? Are cities and governments going to be involved considering the topic?
Okay, so hold on. You're going to have to click for me because I totally broke this. I just dropped it. So that's a really good question. Really the role in organization, obviously that, because the city is the co-host, normally it's a host country that sort of leads it to the NGOs, but I think the city will have an important voice here and the city council. But really it's NGOs, right? And it's the NGOs and the members of these subcommittees and the program subcommittee in particular who's deciding who to reach out to and invite. And so we create long lists, people share their ideas. We're going to talk about what we should talk about and also who we think would be a good person to represent an organization to talk about, like to bring. So that's also something we want to hear. But the truth of the matter is it's these subcommittees that make those decisions. So we want those people from not just NGOs, but from government. We want ambassadors here. We want private sector leaders here at a high level and people that can share different experiences. We want social entrepreneurs here. We want youth speakers. We want people representing, a broad regional perspectives, perspectives from marginal groups, etc.
So will cities in the area be at least, the city governments be invited to attend?
So attendance, absolutely, and I think this is one of the things that is important for us to discuss is how do we make it relevant and where do we want to place our emphasis in terms of who we want to see here and who we want to attract to come. Because if there's, I don't want to say there would be nothing for them, but we want to make sure if that's who we want to be here, that there's something for them. And not just to show up for one thing and then dash off, but to bring a group and really engage and see what's being discussed and have an input and take something back with them. And maybe have some inputs into that outcome document. And maybe pay attention to that outcome document and refer to it and use it moving forward. Any other questions? We'll move on. Okay, so if you have any further questions, tweet them or Facebook them because we like to also very openly on social media be in contact. Okay, so this is sort of an open consultation and based on, so the opening question is how can we make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable? And basically that's SDG 11, that's goal 11. Make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And that's what we have to do, so how can we do it? And so I have two questions here just to get you thinking and to share your experiences with us. So I don't want to ask you to speak about any one topic in any order, so just we'll take comments and questions as they come and open it up, and I also have other specific questions that I can ask as well. And so the one question is, share and highlight your experiences. How can we, so in your experience, how can we share and highlight experiences from Utah and Salt Lake City and the Midwest? Okay? I mean, obviously we're here in Salt Lake City, we want to highlight that. We want to bring the experiences and best practices here. And also, as has come up in other conversations, what are some of the challenges that you're facing in Salt Lake City and other places in these issues? Let's be honest about it as well. So how do we do that and under this topic? Yes?
Would there be a place to discuss things as preoccupied concerning in our local community as the homeless population?
I think that is something that so absolutely yes, it's a concern of every single city that I've ever been to in my life, and communities beyond cities, small cities, big cities. So I think yes, if there's interest and it fits in, I don't see why we wouldn't discuss it. So I think that it's great that you brought it up, and I'll take that as I think we should discuss that at the conference, and it's noted. Yes.
One thing that I think that Salt Lake City really exemplifies is the network. And, I wonder if there's a group, likely LDS carriers and others that can speak to, and NGOs, the lifeblood of an NGO is benevolent from large donors and foundations. And so I wonder if there's those to be taken around. How does Salt Lake City share that guiding path of benevolence with others, as well as the risk of benevolence that is given as not goals and impact statements, things of that associated with it, so that NGOs are actually utilizing that
I'll say two things quickly about that. So obviously noted, you know, we're very lucky and grateful to have the support of LDS, you know, of the church and of the charities. They have been interacting with us in a number of different ways at the UN over the years, and I think they're a hugely important partner here. So I look forward to the support and the engagement of LDS, both the church and the charities arm of the church, to help us weave in a really substantive and important way an interfaith discussion. So it's up to us to decide exactly how we do that. But linked to that, this question of self-reliance. So how do we help without creating dependency and support self-reliance and dignity? I think as we build it in, that will definitely come out. It's something that's been mentioned a lot. That phrase self-reliance has come out since I've been here on Thursday multiple times, and I've taken note, literally. So I think it'll come out, and as we discuss, you know, keywords that we think need to be in, for example, the concept node, and how we, you know, really what kind of text we use to describe our sessions, that's something that we'll pay attention to. So yes, 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 yes.
Like you ever see, have you ever visited around the world as a homeless problem? Much of that homeless problem in the cities that I've visited all over the planet are related to drug consumption. Will that kind of thing be discussed here?
If we think that it's important enough, so there are going to be a lot of issues. Why should it be? I'm asking. Yeah. So why? So should it be? Should it be? I'm not saying I disagree. Just let's talk about more why it should be.
Okay.
You want? Can you share a little bit why? So
Well, I
yes.
think it should be because it's a worldwide problem. It's
Yes.
a worldwide challenge. The consumption of drugs in the market for drugs is worldwide.
Thank you. So,
Yes.
so I'll remember, but we're also going to note down, and you should, if you can all help us remember. And as you know, if you're, for example, serving on the program subcommittee, yeah.
As the lady just mentioned, it has to do with being safe, because if you're in an area where a lot of illicit drug consumption is being participated in, the city is not safe, nor the population.
Or if you're suffering from an addiction or dealing with an addiction, you're probably not the most resilient that you can be as an individual.
Right.
So I'm sorry, I'm going to go on the wrong. Yes, please.
I think one thing that in our work, we work with families all over the world, and I think that that's a huge social and cultural importance here, particularly in this area. I'm looking at resilient, I'm looking at safe, I'm looking at sustainable, and so I really think that it is important when we're discussing our cities and human settlements to focus on the role of families in building resilient, safe, sustainable, and inclusive communities. And I think that that is something that Utah brings, that the Midwest brings. But I think, you know, you've been listening to all these NGOs today, and virtually every single one are supporting and sustaining families, mothers in family, you know, in family settings. I think that needs to be a really important theme in the conference as well.
Thank you. Yes? Thank you. Yes.
I think we also, from 11.3, it says the sustainable urbanization, and Utah is a very rapidly growing state in a mountainous region. And being a member also of the Utah International Mountain Forum, we focus a lot on sustainable mountain development. But I think especially having the conference here would give us a good forum to start looking at different ways, you know, how climate change is impacting mountain communities, how water resource usage is impacting those communities, and how trying to find arable land or ways to use the land in sustainable ways is important. I know Utah itself, basically, the agriculture accounts for about 40 some odd %
Yes, and Salt Lake City is the host, and therefore and even as I started thinking about this conference, I kept thinking cities, and of course cities are going to be, I think, an important focus, but this goal is about cities and human settlements. It's every place where humans live. So I think it's important for us to think not only about cities, large and small, but also rural areas as well, and linkages, and some of that came through in the points that you were raising. Yes?
Two things. We have a very strong rural community in Utah with unique cultures that you highlighted. And that relates to resiliency and sustainability. We're a great example of intergenerational connectedness. And I think that's something that we can highlight.
Thank you. Do you want to talk more about the examples and how we could bring them in?
Well, for instance, my family, after being relocated in Wyoming during World War II, this group of individuals, intergenerational connected family, came down to Utah, to a small rural community, and there found a safe place to live and a place to use their talents and skills and to be influential in the community. And it's fun to see how our family started out in that little small town. And, my father dared to participate in Lions Club. And then my mother and father, when they were 65, dared to investigate the local church. But that kind of growth and flourishing probably happened because of the intergenerational family units that came together.
I see. Thank you. Yes. Yes? Yes.
I was thinking about the very, very large. I think we have a lot of events that help us figure out how to put it to us. How for this year, yeah, we have so much freedom, so much.
So I've seen a lot about the refugees, even your point about intergenerational families supporting each other. It's also a migration story, and this sort of keyword of resettlement. There's a lot of resettlement happening in different ways, and over the years here, there seem to be a lot of amazing stories to be told, and certainly it's a global issue that is extremely pressing. So if we can bring it into the conference, I think it would be wonderful. And just so that you know, in December, there's going to be a major international conference in Marrakesh in Morocco, and countries are going to agree on something called the Global Compact on Migration. So, how we should, as an international community, be working together on these issues. So, very timely. Yes, and Brian, had you wanted to say something?
I just want to piggyback on that. There was a study done recently of elected officials' statements about refugees, and Utah was the only state where none of the elected officials had ever said anything negative about refugees.
That's a tweet right there. Beautiful. Let's note that. That's wonderful. Please.
But when I think about inclusive spaces of really important that we're incorporating perspectives and the experiences of other people that live in those spaces. I mean, sometimes we can be even out of the business of our parts and on the programs and processes and products that we bring. I mean, really understanding the needs of the people in the area, really drawing out and having people that are used, but what their dreams are, how might we involve them in the design of the solution. Really great examples of how that so I would love to see something that could really take how might we take what we know about human-centered design and apply that as NGOs as something that's helpful.
So I would absolutely open up it's for you to do. I think that we would love to see it. I think that, the last conference actually, we were talking about multilateralism. And I think we can openly talk about the fact that in this country and in the world, we're experiencing a little bit of a moment where people are sort of turning away from each other and turning a little bit inward. So how do we keep talking to each other, and how do we keep working together? And part of that is making sure that people that we're supposed to be serving actually feel like they're being served, and that they're reflected in the conversations that we might have at a conference like this. So also, I think there are probably many ways to do what you're talking about, and I'd love to see you put it into action in the planning process here in Salt Lake City, also because you're here. But also the other NGOs who are involved in planning, I think would all agree 100% with the approach that you're talking about.
And also that the last thing I added, that concept of about it without it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, that is a youth mantra, and I think pretty much any youth, like people with disabilities, the autism community, just don't talk about us. Let us talk about us and talk about us. Did you? Yes.
Yeah, I do have one. I think in feeding youth, in 2015, I think Utah did a pretty good example of being a leader in their fairness for all, with including and considering those who were LGBT and the needs that they have. I think that, I don't know if that's an area that would also be considered, but as far as an example from Utah, I think that was one that be considered to model in other places.
So I'll just say on that, and love to hear more about it, the question of inclusive cities, right? And so accessibility for people with disabilities is just one little piece of that, but inclusion. And that includes issues like income inequalities in income and social status, and a lot of those points were brought up by different people today and examples from different parts of the world. So the inclusion question, I think, will be somewhere towards the top, and we'd love more feedback about that. Yes, and then yes, and then yes, and then yes. Yeah.
I think it's easy to talk about homelessness and drug problems and the environment, but I know I'm bringing up this kind of a chicken and egg situation here, but I think it's really hard to go and get educated, and it's hard to go and improve the climate or your environment if you're hungry. And I think for me, I'm passionate about job growth, especially in developing parts of the world, because these people aren't going to go and get educated if they're hungry. They want to go find a job so they can feed themselves and feed their families. So I think that's important. And I know Utah has the fastest growing economy in the nation. I think we could build off of that as an organization come to the nation or come here, and they could see us and understand how we're building our economy and improving the jobs around us and take that back to their home.
Thank you. So important point. So about jobs, where does it come into all of this? Is it at the top? Is it cross-cutting? Is it something that should come out in the course of a conversation? Is it a point that should be, or should it be the topic of one of our major sessions? Yes, and then the woman in the back. Yes.
Diversified transportation infrastructure, obviously, regionally, we associate that with air quality, but we can also recognize how that can benefit anywhere targeted to improve the democracy of the economy and jobs, getting people places here and there. If there's better transportation, getting people to get to the jobs, they can get that water. I mean, any about those infrastructure questions that can improve for us regionally, both the air quality and globally, given for the jobs and better moving around.
It's interesting that one of the reasons that we're able to come to Salt Lake City is because of the infrastructure, right? And also, I think the president of the university talked about infrastructure in terms of technology, and the question of infrastructure and the growing city and sort of urban people getting jobs through the growth here, moving into other areas, and how infrastructure is going to, how infrastructure needs to be built to deal with all of that, and how that's linked to resource use and natural resource use is, and how that impacts people's health is also a big part of the conversation we need to have. So again, more feedback and discussions about, so how can we turn these into topics, and what do we want to bubble to the surface? that we'll continue the conversation and we'll see from the concept note then where do we go from there. But hopefully you'll actually have a chance to see the draft of the concept note. Yes?
I wanted to build on the hours on the road that much time. Some of the dangers is looking at a lot of car accidents that injuries and deaths, as well as our earth quality problems stemming from that. So that is increasingly pedestrian friendly.
All right. Ma'am, did you still have a question?
Transportation, and I'm actually from Detroit. Nicer place to serve.
Troy, excuse me.
So I wonder if we could bring somebody that really do transportation right, and learn from them. I know we're trying to go places, and I think it's nice to see.
Yeah, it's a huge question. Yes, yes, people haven't spoken yet, possibly. Yes, yes.
Just real quickly, some of you may know that NAACP was recently in town a couple months ago. One of their top leaders is from San Francisco, and a member of his church was just newly elected mayor, London Reed of San Francisco. He actually, having spent time here in Salt Lake City, asked me to get Mayor Biskupski in touch with Mayor Reed so that San Francisco could learn from Salt Lake City about their words, not mine, about sort of the orderliness and the cleanliness, it's all relative, of the city. So yes, while we do have some things to learn maybe about transportation, we also have some things to share. And I think that should be part of this whole effort.
Thank you. Yes, and then yes.
I would love to see a discussion on mental health. That's something that's very prevalent in Utah, and I can't tell you how many friends have come to me and they've expressed that they struggle deeply with mental health and they don't have access to care. And these are people who have like amazing ideas on how to help Utah, and they have so many leadership skills, but they're not able to implement them because they're struggling with mental health. And I think in order to start creating more of like this resilience and inclusive and safe community, we need to address that so that we can help these leaders and they can come up with these ideas and actually implement them. So that's a discussion that I would love.
And I know as a state we've been coining the term silicon slopes, and I know a lot of that's going into like computer development, Adobe, all those big tech corporations. But what we really aren't addressing are future technological developments like self-driving vehicles, because the way we implement that will restructure vehicle ownership as a whole, transportation
And the economy.
Also issues such as AI, how does it get implemented, how does it get shared, how do we provide artificial intelligence assistance to these developing countries in a way that they can naturally develop as a society without having to lose their cultural roots.
Yes.
So one of the things, we talked about the government's response or response to the national to immigration, migration. We talked about refugees as the fundamental people in the community that NGOs serve here. But having the community at large treat people as their new neighbors, as opposed to this caravan, right? Like you said, instead of people turning their backs to inclusion, diversity, any way that we can engender that commitment to, and I look at inclusive, safe, resilient, sustainable, that's being a good neighbor. And so any way that we can not preach to the choir of people who are going to be there, but really grow that neighborhood as
I'm hoping to get feedback on two more specific questions. Oh, yes, please.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I'm still thinking about something that you said. Because there's a big groundswell of support, but there's also, we call it put down big sections of the United Nations. So my question is, what is being done as far as groundwork to create civil dialogue, or so that we get the right people to participate in this event? So is there anything in the works right now as far as civil discourse or any kind of, I don't know, I'm just kind of asking like prep work, kind of get the right people, so that we don't have this kind of split
Yes.
polarization to happen.
So I think we're going to depend on, so if you want to talk UN-wide, I think different parts of the UN are working with society in very different ways. And just one example is that a major youth strategy, which is 18 to 32 again, for the United States nations was just announced. And in a nutshell, it says, we know that youth are going through challenges. We know how important the role of youth, that age demographic is. We believe in your skills and your leadership, and we believe we have something to gain by providing platforms for you to be leaderships and play a role on the sort of global stage in addition to what you already do locally. So that's just one example of how, at a policy level, on the global level, the UN is trying to put more focus on civil society. But I mean, there's really a lot, and I think of what's going on. And this is, one major thing that we're doing, and we're asking all of you to help us make sure that the right people are in the room, and to help us make sure we don't bring together a choir and preach back to ourselves, and to help us bring, use this opportunity to bring people who might not be talking to come and talk together about the issues and share what you're doing with a highlight of, what we have to share from, Utah, from Salt Lake City, and from the Midwest. I think that's really a strength of the opportunity that we have. So we're counting on you a little bit to help us, and I think we do have the core of that kind of a constituency sort of poised to stand up and move forward and do this with us, including the church, including UVU, including other big actors, and also perhaps some private sector interests. So I think we're off to a good start. If we sort of you go back to the roller coaster analogy, we climbed pretty high, I think, and we're at a point to we have a lot of momentum. So, but we need all of you to make sure that we have a safe and fun and a useful ride. Yes.
It seems to me from what you presented that a lot of this is NGOs and the role of NGOs. And so I think one of the things that NGOs everywhere I deal with, particularly the charitable and humanitarian aspect, is avoiding the Santa Claus effect, where the Americans trot in with, packages of goodies. And the other is what I'll call kind of the ego, or dictator. Well, we know everything. We're so cool. We're so great. We're going to come in and tell you how to do it. And so I want to piggyback on the comment that was made earlier. How can NGOs interact with cities and human settlements and communities in a way that is supportive of them solving their own problems? That we empower them to solve their own problems. I think that needs to be a really huge thing, instead of UN or any other government or any other NGO coming in and dictating to you how to solve the problems, that we focus on empowering them to come up with their own solutions, and how can we then be supportive of that?
Personally, I very strongly agree, and certainly that's what I've heard. This agency, and I certainly think that's a direction that we're going in. So two more quick questions. We have one more minute, so two questions. One is, we're about to be living in a world where there are no more survivors of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, and there are no more survivors of the Holocaust in our world to remind us of what a horror World War II is. And the memories of the Cold War are fading fast. So just the whole concept of peace. We may be at a crossroads in history where we maybe need to have a conversation about, is there any feedback on that? And the second thing is the Secretary General of the United Nations is organizing a climate summit in 2019. It's one of it's the top priority for him right now. So that's something that our only ask is that we have a climate change conversation at this conference. It would be one of the focus areas. So feedback from you on the issue of peace, how important it is, how can we talk about it, or how should we talk about it at this conference? And number two, what would be the appropriate way to talk about climate change at this conference? Thank you.
Here in Rocky Mountains, is the role of women.
Thank you.
I think we should absolutely celebrate our successes. I think, Steven Pinker's book, Enlightenment Now, an exceptional one, shows a lot of trends up. The millennial goals, a bunch of those were hit. And so, while there's challenges, I think that we, can't be all doom and gloom. We've got to celebrate the fact that, there's unbelievable democracies in the world now. There's, there have been successes on violence, in humanity, and we celebrate those things as with all.
Thank you. Positive approach. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to close. And Felipe, wherever he is, hopefully will pass out the goodies. So maybe he's passing them out there, he's getting them ready probably. Okay, so yes, and then yes, right? Was it? And yes. Okay, then we'll close.
So my concern is, did the Cold War ever end? Because we still have the nuclear escalations. There's, of course, the concerns of what's happening in the South China Sea. Russia moving around their troops around the border, the situation in Ukraine. I mean, how can we really address those issues when we're still worried about military escalations? I mean, we're not the policemen of the world, granted, but what can we do to help maybe realize, has war really left?
I think that a lot of unrest and violence starts with intolerance. And so I think that's something that we can really talk about. How can we get more people to be tolerant of one another and their differences? And also teach people how to speak up in a way that's not like super aggressive, and just teach people to love one another and be accepting of each other. And in Utah, it's interesting because we have a lot of people who are very similar in their beliefs. And I think that teaching people that everyone deserves like the same respect would make a huge difference.
So there's a I just have to say there's a committee for hospitality, and I think code of conduct is something that we haven't had in the past for the conference, but it would be something. I'm not saying that we need it, but it would be nice to think about. This is how we want to conduct our conversations and behave towards each other while we're at this conference. It would be something nice. You might even want to think about leading it up. Okay, last one.
Okay, so you asked how we should approach climate change.
Yes.
And it's very, we have a very moved in, I'm here very much people who don't think that climate change is so one thing that I have to say is not necessarily, yes, the climate is changing, but pollution is something that's here. So when we say, oh, well, things that are more sustainable will have less pollution. So that's something that focusing on things that in your own life, short term, do the right action and do the long term.
Thank you very much. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there. We've done a lot of listening. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and we hope that the process will continue. We do consider it this kind of a process of going back and forth. So thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you so much to Baltimore and to Utah Valley University. And I'll hand it back to you. And everyone who's spoken, for all of you staying today.